Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and today I'm going to be reviewing the CR-Scan Otter from CREALITY. It's a multi-lens scanner that can capture geometric detail from small to big objects, as well as capturing the color. It uses infrared structured light, much like a TrueDepth Face ID camera on an iPhone, so it's safe for eyes, and also means that it can scan objects without the need for prepping the objects with expensive scanning sprays or coats. So what do I think of this device? And is it the 3D scanner for you? Well, let's find out. First, I wanted to thank CREALITY for providing me with this scanner for my honest review of it. There are affiliate links in the video description that do help out the channel if you use them, but they do not influence my opinion on the product one way or the other. So first, the product does come in a nice little box with pictures of the scanner as well as many of the stats that I'll be going over in this review. Inside is a nice semi-rigid cloth covering case to protect the scanner as well as store all of the wires and accessories that come with the scanner. Taking a look inside, we have a calibration board that is used if you need to calibrate the scanner. It's a unique board specific to your scanner, so it's important to keep it clean and safe in case you ever need to recalibrate the lenses on the scanner. We also have the user manual with instructions. There is a scanning mat that should also be used with random reflective sticker dots to aid in the tracking of small detailed objects. Then we have a few of these USB to USB-C adapters in case you want to use this scanner with a laptop, which I ended up doing with my wife's MacBook Air. There is also a strap for the carrying case if you would like to make it over the shoulder. Under the second flap, you will find the scanner itself protected in the molded case. CREALITY also provided a nice little test model of this owl that you can use right away to get acquainted with your scanner. You then have all the wires associated with the scanner. There is a main USB-C to USB cable that is around 6 feet long, that can also power and run data from the cable at the same time if plugged into a sufficient USB 3.0 plug. If you don't have a powerful enough USB port, you can also use the supplemental power with an additional USB-C to USB cable that plugs directly into the previous cable I just mentioned. Finally, we have the scanner itself. It's fairly lightweight and easy to handle. You will see what looks like multiple lenses on the front of the device. The larger lens in the center is actually a projector that is emitting out the infrared structured light, which is naked to the eye but would look like a large grid of dots. That output gets captured by either the long-range depth cameras on the outside of the device for larger items, or the close-range depth cameras on the two lenses closest to the projector. On the right side here is a color camera with some LED lights for capturing color at the same time as the scan. On the back of the device is a plug for the data and power, as well as some buttons on the left for adjusting the exposure of the cameras, as well as being able to start and stop the scan straight from the device without having to press the button in the software. Another really cool feature about the plug is that it comes with a feature to physically screw the USB-C into place, so there is no way the cord will pop out while scanning. On the bottom is a plug that can be removed for attaching the camera to a tripod. However, this machine does not come with one. So the first thing that I scanned was this owl figure that came with the device. After I was happy with the model, I dropped it into my 3D printer and just printed it. The only thing I did at all to the model post-scanning was to cut about a millimeter off the bottom so it would sit flat on the heated bed of the printer. I printed it up, and even though it's in all black, I can tell that it did an amazing job of replicating this model. It's great to be able to scan and then print something literally within minutes of playing with this scanner. Next, I wanted to try out this medal my daughter got from her basketball league. First, I wanted to see if I could capture the detail in this medal, which it should be able to do, as this scanner can capture a resolution as small as 0.05 millimeters. The second was the fact that this is a pretty shiny object, and in my personal experience with 3D scanners in the past, they would not be able to scan much without a spray or coating on it so that the scanner would record the surface without just bouncing the laser off of the surface. I was pretty happy with the detail that I was able to achieve, including super fine detail in the net and even a faint outline of the backboard in the background. I was blown away with just how accurate the model came out. I then ran this through an online site that converted it into a height map, and then using my fiber laser engraved the same design smaller onto a brass coin. I was super happy with how it turned out, and then even scanned my daughter for a model on the other side of the coin to really make this a special custom keepsake for her for a long time. After that, I did more of a product scan in case, for instance, I wanted to build an attachment or peripheral to this drill. It was built using multiple scans and turned out pretty nice. It wasn't perfect, and there were some sections where you could potentially run into issues, but overall a decent starting point. One thing that you may run into issues with are when things are identical shape on different sides of the object. The software is attempting to align your model based off of the geo it has already scanned. If you were to scan another section and it's identical to the section you scanned before, there is a possibility the model will try to orient itself with the previous scanned area. This is also an issue with round sections. You can see in this heat gun I was attempting to scan, when I got to the front nozzle, the model started to spin around since the scanner was only really focusing on the round nozzle and couldn't tell up from down at that point, so it started spinning. You really want to be careful around those areas and make sure you have some other type of anchoring points. Next, I wanted to do a scan of an object that I had previously scanned with other 3D scanners so I could compare and contrast between the two. This Otter scanner doesn't currently support wireless scanning, but I just went out with my wife's MacBook Air and made it portable. I scanned this model in about 6 scans. Honestly, most of it was done in one, but I kept going back to get even more detail on certain areas I wanted to focus on. In the end, the model turned out really nice, and since this scanner records color information at the same time, I was able to see the color right away. Now, in fairness, I was able to add texture to the previous model I scanned with the other scanner, but that was by incorporating multiple images that I shot and projecting them onto the surface in a completely other software package. It worked well, but it's nice that this Otter scanner does this by default without the additional steps. Now again, the textures are not perfect, and it really may depend on how you scanned it and the lighting conditions as to how nice it turns out, but at the very least, it's a good start. Compared to the scan I did with another 3D scanner on the right, you can see that the Otter scanner on the left was nicer and more detailed. It really did a nice job of capturing the fine details, and if I remember correctly, was much easier to stitch all of the components together in the CREALITY Scan software. Next, I wanted to take a shot at scanning my car, but not only put on the wrong reflector dots on the car, I used the 3mm ones when I should have used the larger ones. I also tried to scan too much at once, and the scanner just couldn't see enough of the marker dots at the same time to be able to aid in the track. I then put a bunch of the correct tracking dots on the rear bumper of the car to properly scan the surface and got a decent result. Not a perfect scan, and it did have issues with the reflective taillights, but overall a pretty good representation of the rear bumper. It would definitely take more practice and planning to properly scan the car in its entirety, but this was a good start for testing. Next was a model that I really wanted to try, and that was this replica of a FIFA World Cup trophy that I had. I really wanted to see how it would hold up since there were so many shiny and mirrored surfaces on this. Like I said before about my experiences with 3D scanners in the past, I would have not been able to capture this at all without some sort of coating to record the surface. Now, I don't want to pretend that this was easy. It did take me turning off most of the lights in my office, as well as even turning off my monitors so that no extra light would be captured, but I was able to fully scan this entire model, even the mirrored parts. I then 3D printed the model once again after simply altering the bottom of the model to make sure it was flat, and then added a few coats of paint. While I need to find a shinier paint or figure out gold plating, it still turned out pretty impressive. Next, I wanted to scan my daughter, so I had her stand while I scanned her entire body, as well as a detail on her face. Now, it turned out really nice, There were some areas that I had to go in and kind of clean up in another 3D package. I think most of that was probably due to the fact that she did not stand completely still. But overall, it was a really nice scan. I also, again, 3D printed this one up, and it turned out really, really nice, and she really liked it. So I thought I might quickly run you through the process I went through about scanning that model to give you a preview of how the software works. Okay, so when you first open the program, you'll be greeted by this Get Started screen. Now, you can have this not show up every time, but it does have, some settings or just some general guidance on how to use your particular 3D scanner. Now, you can also come into this CR-Scan Otter, and that will bring up another screen. And this does have a manual, tutorials, the software manual. So you can go through here, and this will give you different things that you might use in practicing or figuring out how to use this scanner, and gives you tips on some settings that you should use based on what you're trying to scan. And then this is the main screen, so we can start a new scan. Over here on the right, there is the user guide and video tutorials. When you click on these, it'll just bring you to some of the same areas that I was just talking about on the particular website. And then on the left over here, we can see a bunch of the models that we've already scanned. If you click on one, it'll bring you into the editing suite of that particular model. So this was a little Grinch 3D print that I scanned. It did a really, really good job. And you can go back in if you want to do any of the editing on these assets. But I'm going to start a model from scratch. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to say new scan. And I'm going to do a scan of the owl, which was the model that came with the scanner. Okay, so in here, depending on what kind of object you're using, it will change which of the lenses that the scanner will use. So for small objects, you want to use the two smaller cameras on either side that's right next to the projector, and not the larger ones. And that's why you're going to pick normal, and then I'm going to pick small for the object size. On this one, I want to focus mainly on the geometry. I want to go high quality, and I do not have a turntable with this one. But if you will notice, the way that I have it set up here is I did put it up a little bit higher. It's just easier to get scanning underneath it when it's up higher, especially when it's right on a table. So it might be worth elevating things just so that they're easier to see. And I'm going to hit scan. Okay. And so already you can see that I can see a picture of what is being scanned. You can see that my lighting's a little hot, but that should be okay. So if you go into this up here, you can change the exposure and how much is getting exposed to the light. You can also click on manual, and then you can move this up, but you'll see, like, as you start getting more and more exposure, it's kind of blowing it out. So that's definitely not what you want to do. On this particular one, I'm just going to keep it on auto. You can also rotate to the left or right, and that's really just changing whether you want to scan vertically or horizontally. I'm going to keep it right now just the way that it is, and scan everything horizontally. Okay, so I'll close that. And then you'll see this bar on the left here, and you'll see that as I get within a certain distance, it'll tell me that I'm in the optimal scanning range. And you'll see on the side that I have a green image here, and when it's green, it means that it's recording it well. If I get too far away, or if I got too close, or if I was just in a weird area, you'll see how things will turn red. And so you don't want to be in that red area. You want to keep it in this optimal range right here. So, it's telling me to move closer, or if I'm too close, it'll tell me to move further away. So you want to kind of watch that graph on the left here and try to keep it in that range. Over here, we can also turn the floodlight on the device itself on or off. For right now, I just want to keep it off because I have enough light already in my scene. And then all we're going to do is hit start over here. Now, you can also press the triangle button on the back, and that will start, and if you hold it down, I believe it'll stop. The plus button and minus button again will adjust the exposure. And again, you can start and stop a scan while you're scanning it, but I personally prefer just to do a scan, and then when I feel like it's okay, I just stop it, and then I'll do another scan if I want more detail. And the reason I do that is because sometimes you'll get so far on a particular scan and it'll look really nice, and then you'll keep going back over the same area, and then something will screw up, and then you just feel like you ruined the scan that you have. So for me personally, I don't try to do too much in one. I'd rather do multiple scans, and I'll show you how to put those together. So right now I'm just going to kind of get within the range, and again, you can press the button on the back, but I'm just going to press it in the software itself, and I'm going to hit start. Okay, so I want to kind of stay in that optimal range, and I'm going to just rotate this object on this little pedestal that I have here, and I'll just kind of roll it around. Not too fast. This scanner will capture at 20 frames per second, so you don't want to go too fast. And the way that this works is it's always somewhat looking for data based on the model that you've already scanned. So if you were to go too fast, it might lose its tracking, and it'll tell you, it'll say, hey, go back to an area that I've already done so I can figure out the tracking. But I'm feeling pretty good about this already, but I'm just kind of going over just a little bit more, and then let's try to get into some of those areas. I know I'm getting a little bit too close, but I want to make sure I'm not leaving any crevices or anything like that out. Alright, so once I'm done, I'm going to hit stop, and then it'll ask me if I want to complete scanning. I'll say yes. Okay, so this is the scan that we've done here. The first button is if we want to add more to this scan. We can also import a project. So on the instances where I scan using a laptop, but I wanted to do all the processing on my main PC, this is where I would import those. There's also an import from the phone, and I know on the box it says that this scanner does not have any type of wireless scanning yet. I don't know if that means that if it's coming in the future, but or if you just happen to have the files on your phone, maybe that's a way to bring them in. But for right now, I'm just looking. This is kind of the images that the scanner has taken, and so what I want to get first is the point cloud. So I'm going to come over here. Now there is a one-click process, and if you click on this, it'll just go through and pick all the settings based on what it feels is best for you. But if you come down underneath that, you can choose your own settings. You don't have to just do the whatever they tell you to choose. So I'm gonna do the manual because I just want to see it step by step. So I'm going to click on this button right underneath the one-click process and click that. And depending on how big it is, how fast your computer is, this process might take just a moment or two. So it's running through, and then what this is going to give us is it's going to give us a point cloud. So this is kind of the capture of everything. And then the point cloud is a separate grouping of basically wherever it was able to capture that infrared data on the model itself. So let me just let that run. Okay, so it's now been just a maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It will greatly depend on the power or speed of your computer. I'm also capturing video while I'm doing this, so I'm sure that doesn't help. So you can see it did a pretty good job, and then what we can do here is we can get rid of data that we don't want. So on the bottom here, you'll see that it's picking up a little bit of that stainless steel column that everything was on. So if we come down here to the lasso select, you can either click lasso or you can do a rectangular select, and then I'm just using the left mouse button and holding it down and tumbling around the object until I get it kind of flat. and then I'm going to hit Shift and then drag select over the points that I don't want, and then hit delete. And so I'm just deleting some of the extra point cloud data that I know that I don't want. And so I'm just going to go around and do that. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So you'll see that I am missing a few little sections on here. Now a lot of that will kind of fill in during the next process, but I think I could probably add a few more scans to this to really capture some of that. So what I want to do now is I want to click on the new project, and it's still going to be putting it in the same OWL project name. Now I could change this and update it, but I don't really need to. And so now I'm just going to turn the OWL on its side so that I can do more on the top and on the bottom of this model. And then I am going to keep everything the same, and I'm going to click on Scan, and I'm going to start with his head, kind of zoom in, zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to hit Start. And then pretty much just go through the same process that I went through before. Probably should have secured it a little bit better. It looks like, oh. Well, let's see if I can recover it. And you'll see that even though I just dropped it, it does try to find the scan data that it's already taken, and it'll try to match it to what you have. Again, I didn't do a very good job of securing this, but we'll see what we can get. We'll see how the scan turned out. Let's see how that did. Stop it. Complete the scanning. And then on this one, I know I don't want it to give me any of that data on the bottom here. So I can remove the data even before it goes to clean up the model. So I'm going to lasso select this whole section in here, because I know I don't want that. And then hit delete. And then again, I'm just going to come in here and optimize it. Okay, so that picked up some of those other sections that I didn't have before. Some extra ones probably from when it fell. All right, but I think this will probably give us a complete model when everything is put together. So now this is still just the point cloud. This is not geometry at all. And then this was the original point cloud. And so you can see it also has a lot of that data in there. So you can either pick the origin, which shows those original pieces, or the origin over here, which shows those original pieces, or click on point cloud, and then you'll see those pieces. So now I want to combine these two in this project. So if you come over to here where it says point cloud merging, and we click that, it'll show the two scans that I just did. And you can put these together manually, but I found that this does a really good job. And so I'm just going to select these two, and you'll see that it put both into the scene. You can kind of rotate around, but obviously they're not in the same spot. So if you just click Start, it does a really, decent job of putting all of that stuff back together for you. So it uses the point cloud data, and some math to kind of figure out where things should be. And I have to say I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to hit yes. And so it'll optimize the two pieces together. Again, that seems like it picked up all of the pieces that I wanted it to, which is great. You know, there might be some tiny little sections that are still missing, but some of that will just fill in. So I'm not too concerned about that. That's good. So I'm going to hit this exit merging page. And so now the one kind of downside of doing that is you just want to be very sure that that's what you meant to do, because it will combine the two of these, and I haven't found a way of uncombining these if you wanted to do that. So once that process is done, it's done. So you really want to make sure that everything is situated the way that you want it to before combining those two components. And then after that, what we want to do is we want to combine this into geometry. So I'm going to come over here to this mesh setting, and again there is an auto setting for this, but I kind of like to pick how many faces and the settings that I want. So I'm just going to keep it manual. It looks like it's going to be a million faces. Denoise, if you start to move this up, it'll really smooth out the model. So I don't particularly like using that too much. And then the hole filling will fill in those little tiny sections that we were talking about before. And then the last thing is closure. Closure, like let's say I didn't have anything on the bottom here. Closure would just close that hole. So it would just make the whole model watertight. But I'll just keep the settings as they are here for manual and click. So this one went pretty quick. I don't even know if I'm going to speed up the footage just so you can see how long that took. But you can see it did a pretty decent job all the way around the model. I'm pretty happy with the results that came from that. Okay. Now another thing that this scanner does at the same time is it does record some texture data. So if you come right underneath where the mesh setting was to the color mapping, you can click on color mapping, and it'll go through and basically as it was taking pictures as it was scanning, it's going to combine all of those things. So let's see how this kind of turned out. And this really will vary depending on, you know, your lighting conditions, kind of how you scanned it. So for mine, I was rotating it without rotating the light source, so it might be brighter than it actually is, but let's see how it turned out first. Okay, so there it is with the textures on it. Again, I think it's a little bright, but that's more to do with my lighting condition than the model itself. I'm sure it can be slightly adjusted, but you do get some sort of coloring on it. So yeah, that's really kind of how you do the entire process. After that, you can export. And when you export, you can export as an OBJ, which is a model that will also export out the texture map, and STL. It won't export out textures, but it'll just be a model in case you want to 3D print it, and a PLY, which is not something that I really have used much of. And that's really it. Again, the texture on this one is a little bit brighter. Now, if I just hit the little home button, go back to the home page, it is saving this throughout the whole process, so you can see it here. But if I was to go into another model where I kind of did this, and this texture kind of looks a little bit better. There are some areas on the back where it stretches a little bit, but it's a really good start, especially if you just wanted to clean this texture up in another 3D package. There were a few other models that I ended up scanning, but for the sake of not making this video any longer, I'll simply just show them while giving some final thoughts on the device. Overall, I was pretty impressed with the level of detail that I was able to achieve with this Otter scanner. While I would never really say that you're going to be able to simply point and shoot and get a perfect model, this device is definitely a step in the right direction. It does take some practice to get it right, and the longer you use it, the better your scans are going to become. I really do like the fact that the textures are recorded at the same time, and I love that I don't have to mess with a messy coating on the surface with scanning spray, which is really expensive, or with foot powder spray, which is what I was using with my older 3D scanner, which was cheap but still got everywhere and I didn't like working with it. At around $800 US at the time of this recording of this video, it definitely is not the right product for everyone. Now, there are other options out there, and nowadays much can be done with your cell phone with photogrammetry as well, but you're really not going to get the super detail that something like this device could provide. If I could say anything more, it would be that I wish that for the price of the scanner, it came with a turntable and tripod just to make scanning a little easier for certain objects, but in the end, I preferred it being handheld anyway. So that's it. I wanted to once again thank Creality for allowing me to test out the CR-Otter scanner for you guys. There are affiliate links in the video description that do help out the channel if you use them. But if not, I hope you found this video interesting. And if you did, please do click that like button, drop a comment that helps out the algorithm to spread content like this, and consider subscribing for my videos having to do with 3D printing, laser engraving, injection molding, and all things maker. Thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.